Hello, everyone. This is going to be different from my last format. I'm kind of experimenting as I go along. The last one was a written review, as you can tell by the stale, somber tone in my voice, where it's essentially very consistent. Right here, this is just my live opinion, so you're probably going to get a lot of ahs and ums and stuff like that as I try to figure out what I want to say. I'm not used to this type of stuff, so apologies for that. But thank you for clicking and thank you for giving this a chance. Let's just jump right into the new NHL rules, and I want to give my opinion on them. The competition committee recommended changes to the coach's challenge and expanded video review, including as it relates to a referee's ability to review some of his own calls on the ice. And if you hear noise in the background, that's just a trash truck outside. Apologies for that. So, this is much like the rule change that's happening in the NFL after the Saints Rams game where there was a blatant pass interference call and it was completely missed. Now referees will have the ability to review their own calls, which is kind of interesting, and I think that's coming off of the heels of what happened in the Stanley Cup final. You had a lot of headshots, you had a lot of missed calls, you had some inconsistent calls. I personally don't like this idea because it's going to slow the game down immensely. And frankly, if you really want to make it so calls aren't missed as easily, there's two things you got to do. One, you got to wait it out and hope that the next crop of refs is used to the speed of the game, or two, you slow the game back down. Which is actually my idea for preventing concussions. You slow the game back down to what it was in the early 2000s. I know a lot of people who air quote really want concussions out of the game would never go for that sort of thing. But it's one of your best ways. And in terms of missed calls, it is also the best way. But hopefully, the next crop of refs will be able to call the game more consistently. A player be reasonably required to leave the ice if his helmet comes off during play. I don't like this rule. Now, I understand reasonably. That's the word you got to look for. Reasonably. They don't have to, but they are expected to if they have the opportunity to. Here's my problem, though. That's never going to be in a player's mind. They're always going to be thinking, I'm going to stay on the ice for my team. I'm not going to put my team at a disadvantage just because of a helmet. This is just the type of rule that tries to make it look like they're, being more responsible trying to get concussions out of the game. If you really, 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 really wanted to fix this, you would just have players put their helmet on properly. You would just signify a rule. Look, the strap under your helmet's got to be tightened. It's got to be clicked in. Yada yada yada. You have to do that. If you don't, then you're going to get a penalty. Or you're going to be kicked from the game or something. It's as simple as that. It's the same thing with visors. Visors, are meant to be over your eyes, not above your eyes. There's some players who kind of finagle it and move the helmet around and do things like that. Maybe put the visor up more. Yeah, I would stipulate a rule for that. You could still implement something like this. Like if your helmet comes off and you're in the offensive zone or a neutral zone, I guess you could. But even then, most players would say, well, then I'm putting my team at a disadvantage and we're losing an opportunity to score or gain the neutral zone. You're putting players in a bad position. What happened to Brad Marchand, where he went for that dumb change. This rule will essentially increase the magnitude of that. Plus, you'll have other players. You'll have more incentive for other players to knock players' helmets off. See what I mean? Why hit them in the head when you can just knock their helmet off and make them go off the ice? I just don't think it's a good rule. The defending team not be allowed to change lines when a goalie freezes the puck on a shot from outside the red line. The attacking team would have the choice of end zone dot for the faceoff. So by outside the red line, I'm assuming it means before the red line, which would be considered an icing. So essentially, what you're going to have now is the equivalent of the more current equivalent of cherry picking, where essentially you have a guy skating full tilt just before he touches the blue line. You rip a shot down, off the boards down into the opponent's zone, and then that player can beat them to the icing call. Here's the problem. Here's the problem, and I don't so much mind the end zone and the end zone faceoff dot. I don't mind that. If the goalie's first reaction is to cover the puck when no one's around him, you should get punished for that. There's no reason for that. which hardly ever happens. So I don't really see a point, but I guess you want to cover some bases. However, with one of the major problems with the original icing was players would go full tilt toward the back red line and they would end up getting into collisions and air quote get injured, which I don't think happened very frequently. I think the rule change was just sort of a reaction to the whole concussion thing to pretend like they're doing something. You're essentially going to get the same thing here. Players are going to go full tilt to try and beat each other, or worse, try and stop each other from getting to the puck. It's going to be the same thing now. You've essentially brought that back, and you're actually rewarding it because if the goalie says, well, I don't want to put my player in danger and covers it up, now that team gets a problem. That team gets a punishment for it. I don't think they thought some of these rules out really well, and I know I'm early in the list here, but still, this is, it again, ripe for abuse. The attacking team have the choice of end zone dot on a faceoff after an icing and starting a power play. Yeah, that's fine. Other teams should be punished if they ice the puck and or start a power play. But if you're gonna bring this in, I think you should bring the timeout back. Because here's my defense of the timeout. A timeout is not useful in the NHL. Once in a while, you can maybe take a timeout and drop a play, but the only thing it was ever used for was the icing, which you're not allowed to anymore. I think they should bring that back. They're probably not going to, and so you're going to have, you know, double the punishment here on an icing. But yeah, I personally think they should bring it back. The defending team not be allowed to change lines, and the attacking team have the choice of end zone dot for the faceoff if an official determines a skater on the defending team knocks off the net unintentionally. Here's my problem with this, and it's going to go right along with the goaltender interference problem that we have. If two players are battling each other and the opposing team just so happens to hit the goalie, it's goaltender interference. The same thing's going to happen here. You're going to have two players battling behind the net. The defending team's player is going to be knocked into the net. The net's going to come off, and they're going to get punished for it. I don't think that's right. And it says unintentionally. So someone knocked him into the net. He knocked the net off. How is that fair? I say that isn't fair. I don't like that rule at all. All faceoffs be at one of the two dots in the attacking zone when the attacking team is responsible for the puck going out of play in the attacking zone. I don't like this rule either. If you're at a point where your offense is just not going well or they're keeping you, let's say hypothetically, think about Blues Bruins game 7. The Blues were keeping the Bruins out of the zone. Let's say hypothetically Torrey Krug ripped a shot off the net because they couldn't get anything going. Now, not only do the Bruins get to get a line change, they get to slow the game down and be able to get themselves into the offensive zone. They get a guy who can win a face-off, everything like that. What if a goal was scored off of that play and was 4-2 and the game was a little bit closer? You know what I mean? It's ripe for abuse. I don't like the rule. I don't like the rule. I don't think it's a very good idea. Personally, I think if you shoot the puck up into the netting, like it's one thing if it's deflected, deflection doesn't count. Like you're trying to rip a shot on net, it just hits off a stick or whatever and goes out of play, or hits off the post and goes out of play. That happens. But if you purposefully shoot it up, or even if you accidentally shoot it up, it should be taken out of the zone. If you're going to implement a rule like this, then what you should do is if a player purposefully knocks the puck out of play, it should be a delay of game penalty on the offensive team. Just my opinion. It just sounds right for abuse. So they might want to work on that and tune it a little bit. In addition, the competition committee recommended the adoption of a proposal that would modify existing regular season tie-breaking procedures and adding additional criteria. This is essentially getting rid of the whole regulation plus overtime wins to determine things, and it's just bringing it to wins. I never understood this. Why is an overtime win considered differently from a regulation win? Yeah, the other team got a point, sure, but it's a win. Even a shootout win, it's still a win. A win's a win's a win. So it should just be wins. Simplify it. That whole thing was entirely pointless to me. Anyway, thank you very much for giving this video a chance. I hope you enjoyed it. Give a like if you did. I'd love to hear you guys' thoughts. Tell me if I'm wrong about something. I'd love to hear it. I don't really like these rules at all. Most of them aren't very good. See you next time.